Welcome to Grid Studio. In this video, we're going to look at the general user interface of the software, look at how you can access to some of the settings, what views we have available to you while you're working with Grid Studio, and how you can customize those views based on what you're trying to do at that moment in time. First, let's start looking at the top menu bar over here. Starting from the left, we have the basic files where you can open up new projects, save projects, and specifically you can have access to your project settings that we have over here, and also some over general preferences that are available to customize the Grid Studio software that you like. For example, over here under interface, you can actually adjust the scaling factor of the general user interface as an example. And then over to the next one, we have edits, which is your basic sort of copy and pasting type of thing. And then next to that, we have the different views available. We'll go into the details a little later in this video of all what these views are for, and in terms of layouts and how you can save and customize those layouts. Next one, we have a bit of shortcuts in terms of quickly creating some objects for you. And then the last one at the top menu bar is the help menu, where, for example, you can send feedback or questions about how to use the software. And also you have access to the license manager over here. All the way to the other end of the menu bar, starting from the left-hand side, we've got the timecode manager. The time manager basically allows you to look at and receive different time codes, how the different time codes would be associated for different parts of the software. And if you so happen to be receiving time code, you will get a little time code readout at top over here. Next to that, you have the processing rates or the frame rate that the main software is running. And this is how you can actually adjust the frame rate. So for example, I can run the whole system at 50 frames per second or 60 or 30, depending on what you're doing. Next to that, we've got a little system monitor, which allows you to see how much resources it's using and see and monitor what is going on for the software. Next to it, we've got a little shortcut and some information about, for example, the machine name and some of the network adapters that are available and some system shortcuts. So you can, for example, get quick access to your network connections over here. Then next to it, we've got a little log, system log. So in case you got some log messages or some conflicts within your project, we will show you and see how you would actually do some like broken links and resolve them, for example. And last but not least, the little Grid Studio icon. It's how you get access to your wallet or your license manager. This is the same way as you get access from the help menu. And this is where you can add license, remove license, have access to your online license, release them, and then also have access to or generate the offline license request files, for example. Then the next thing that we want to talk about are the different views that we have. The main section of this software, you can see we have the different views and the different tabs. As you're moving your mouse around, you can see along the border of them, you get a little indicator that you can actually start dragging them around and resizing these windows, depending on what you're doing and how you like it to be. And all of these windows, as you can see, some of them actually have dock multiple windows into sort of the same area. And you can then also move them around by sort of dragging this and moving it around. There are indicators as to how you would actually want to place this new window into the different locations. When you can see that it's like this big gray highlighted area, that it will then snap and place into that as a tab. If you see the little gray white bar at the different borders, this is how you can then snap and put it sort of right next to it, for example. So you can move these around. And you can then have the different tabs and the different locations, for example. Now, the next thing is let's look at what all of these views do and some of them that are available. Starting from the left-hand side at the top, here we have the project tree. So this is where you actually see all of your objects associated with your projects. This is also how you can add any objects that you like. You can sort them, organize them, and put them into folders, for example. Just to highlight over here, this is an indication of how much credit your project is using. And if you do not have enough credits, for example, it will then also show as red. And there are some additional things. For example, if you click over here, there are some additional features that are add-ons, and this is how you can actually turn them on and off. Then on the bottom here, we have a little help menu. So depending on the selected objects, you get a little short statement as to what this object can do. And if you open it up, you actually get some additional information depending on the objects that will help you guide you to see how to, for example, make use of that object. Over here in the center area at the top, we have the artboard. The artboard is where you would actually start designing sort of your dashboard or user interface. Here I have just a very quick one of some buttons, slider, and a color field, color picker. And you would actually design, for example, a dashboard to monitor some values that you are getting, or some system health information as an example. Or you could then build a little control panel to say, if I click on this button, something will happen, and what you would want to do and trigger actions, for example. Next is the timeline. So you can create different timelines, and then the different timelines can have different layers associated with it, and you can start putting keyframes along, and for example, or even have the timeline follow a time code, or you can use it to record data onto the timeline and be played back at a later time. The next view that we want to talk about is the queue list. So we do have a queue list, and you can add different queues, and then you can also define what queues do when they get triggered. Another concept that we have is the state machine, and so you can then define the different parameters that are available for this state machine and what happens and what the values would be when you get into or jump to a different state. Over here in the bottom, let's look at the viewport. This is our 3D visualizer, and you can actually import meshes and see 3D objects, or also see data coming in, being visualized in the 3D environment. For example, if you have tracking data or sensor data, then you can actually see them moving around in the 3D space in real time based on the received information. Next, we have a node editor. The node editor would actually allow you to then create different logic. Depending on the selected objects, they would have different node systems. We have two. One is the workflow, and another one is called a modifier. We will have another video that will then talk about these node systems and how you actually switch between them and what they do and how you actually work with that system. But in general, this is the node editor. The next window that we want to talk about is the library. The library can have access to some icons, for example, and this allows you to, for example, very quickly drag and drop an icon into a widget, for example, and use it and place that onto the widget. Another area that we want to talk about are the extensions. So extensions are the different plugins and extensions that we have available online. And you can then choose the one that you're interested in, that you want to use, right click on it, and then you can actually then install this extension or plugin onto your machine, and then you can then actually have access to it and add that as an object into your project tree. Then over here on the right-hand side, you have the inspector. The inspector is basically the area where you can see the properties and how you can then manipulate the settings or values of the objects and do and investigate what you want to do in that situation, or define the objects, for example. Another window that we want to talk about is the log. So you have a quick access to it, just like over here, but you can also dock it into a permanently open docking location, And you can then also within your system, you can also write log directly into here, or different objects will provide different log information. And then you can actually look in and see how your project is behaving, whether you're getting any errors or warning, for example. And another view that we want to talk about is the monitor. So the monitor does allow you to then actually see how a specific parameter and its value is changing over time. So for example, you can assign tracking data and actually put it into this monitor and see whether the data is how it's behaving over time. Is it really jittery, or does it look very smooth? And you can then decide how or what you need to do afterwards based off from that. While we're navigating between different things, you would see that different views would actually start switching or updating the information within it, depending on the things that are being selected. So for example, as you would see, as I am selecting and jumping around, one of the immediate things is the inspector would actually change depending on the selection. The help menu will also change depending on the object that is selected. And there are other things, for example, while the artboard, in this specific example, I have two different artboards, then I can actually just select between the different artboards, and its associated view will also change as well. Similarly, the node editor, depending on the type of objects that I am selected, you can then see the different views or the selected object and what node or workflow is associated with that selected object. And that goes for a bunch of other views as well. So just be mindful of that. And for any of those views, or for most of those views, you would actually see there is a little icon to lock it. So you can lock these views. So for example, I am really interested in the settings for this push button, and I want to lock it. So while I am selecting on other things, this window will then be locked, and it would not update based on what I have now selected. So this can be done whenever you see that little icon in the little tab, and you can always unlock it. Equally, you can actually open up multiple views or windows of the same type. So for example, I can then open up or lock this inspector for this push button, and coming over here, I can then open up another view. And for example, I want to put it side by side, and I want to, let's say, compare some settings, or I want to assign things very quickly by dragging and dropping. So I can dock one of them or lock one of them and drag it while I still have another one that is free to be jumping around and be updating based on what I am doing, for example. So you can definitely open up multiple views. And it's a single view is of the type is not limited to only one instance of it. So that's quite nice. Some views you would see that there is a little drop down arrow. And in that situation, you do have some quick access. So for example, the inspector, you do actually have a little history to very quickly navigate between previously selected objects. So that just helps you to jump between that view. Or for example, the artboard, because I do have two different artboards coming over here, I can also very quickly switch between the two artboards. I can also click on this little tab over here and also do the same thing. For example, similarly, timeline, you can then actually, if you have multiple timeline objects, you can then also switch between the different timeline, and you can then, of course, as the name suggests over here, add a new timeline, for example. And similarly, on the node editor, you can actually just very quickly see what is the selected objects or the node editor view. What is this viewing? So this is viewing the, let's just switch back, the color field object, and this is the workflow view of that object. And here, if we actually have a modifier for it, then you can then see the view for that as well. So you can actually then see and actually very quickly switch between the two. as well.